And in addition, you've never voted before, so that just in and of itself, there's a huge startup cost in terms of the time and energy you need. Um, and then there's, the fact that you're relatively unsettled and you're not sure, what locality you're going to be investing in. So you don't have time to learn about the local candidates. You just have time to listen to maybe the presidential election debate. So, so you have to re-register every time you vote, and you have to, make sure that you know all of the procedures and you know all of the dates that you need and the address that you need to go and vote. And we don't make it easy for young people in this country to vote. And in addition to that, Iyengar does make an offhand remark that youth culture is cynical often, and and so there is a certain pride in not going to vote because it's not because kind of what's the point is kind of the mentality that he's referencing. But I don't think that that's necessarily always true, and it may not well be true these days. But I think there was certainly a moment when that was, and maybe a lot of moments. So so that's difficult, and so if it's hard to mobilize young people, who do you go after instead? You go after your tried and true mobilizable blocks. And for the Republicans, that's primarily white evangelical Christian voters and very well-to-do business people. And you try to mobilize those blocks as much as you can. For white evangelical Christians, they make up about 20 to 25% of the electorate, and they vote for Republicans by a margin of something like, 80 to 20. So it's their answer to, in the Democratic Party, African Americans. So that's kind of the foundation of their parties, but it's not to say that they exclude others or that their parties are monolithic, or even that those voting blocks are monolithic. It's just to say that it's easy to see where their agenda gets centered and why. And the reason why, Mitt Romney ended up sounding a lot like, Donald Trump sounded a lot like Mitt Romney in terms of what he promised and what he ended up delivering in his first year in office, and why Joe Biden sounds a lot like Hillary Clinton in 2016, and Hillary Clinton sounds a lot like, not in terms of their voice, Barack Obama, but in terms of their kind of policy promises and everything, and their approach, even rhetorically, sounds a lot like Barack Obama, who sounds a lot like John Kerry, is because they are employing very similar strategies to just try to mobilize the people who are inclined to get up and vote for them. And if they're low information voters, but they're dependable voters, you just have to make sure they're excited. If you're running negative ads, again, it's not to persuade people, like independents, not to vote for your candidate. It's to persuade people in that other party that their candidate is not worth supporting, so you should stay home. So that's closer to the reality than what we've all come to really understand from the media subtext, is that only about 25% of either party is really decided, and then the great big middle is like 50%, and that's just not true. It's more like 10. And so it's that 10% really that you don't have to worry about, because that 10% is kind of the bandwagon effect. And it's just what it sounds like. People jump on the bandwagon, that the victory bandwagon at the last minute. And those are the people that, the election's already been decided by then. So it really does come down to whether you're able to mobilize enough of your voters and then demobilize enough of your opponent's voters in the other party. And you get there to be a nominee to be able to do that grand strategy, simply by promoting your biography and saying and convincingly making a case that you are the most viable candidate. And to me, at least in this election, from what I can tell in 2020, the Joe Biden campaign is very similar in character to, at least in a certain dynamic, to the John Kerry dynamic in 2004, simply because it's a Republican. It's for the first time since 2004. It's a Republican president running for a second term after having won the Electoral College vote, but not the popular vote for his first term. And the way that both of them got into the frontrunner position is by making a case that they are more of a serious traditional candidate to the voters than this crazy kind of left-wing person from Vermont. And that's true in both cases, because Howard Dean was the nominee, was almost the nominee in 2004, and John Kerry kind of swatted him away with some rhetoric that made it sound like he was not a serious candidate. And Joe Biden did a very similar thing with Bernie Sanders, and in this year. So it's probably going to be close again, just like it was close in 2004. I think it's going to be closer than people think it is right now. But I think that one thing that you should really look at is take a look at those exit polls and see how much of the coalition is made up of different groups of people, and what the margin was among those groups of people. So if you see the groups I'm talking about, business people and evangelical Christians on the right, and African Americans and Latinx folks and young people on the Democratic side, I think you'll get a good chance, and whoever wins, I think you'll see pretty convincingly that whoever doesn't win wasn't able to mobilize their bases effectively. So we'll see how that goes. Maybe the New York Times is a good website for exit polls in the days after the election, so you could take a look at that. So I think that's essentially all I wanted to get across to you today. So it's a relatively straightforward argument, but I think a really, really interesting one that really upsets a lot of kind of prevailing wisdom on all of these fronts. So with that, I think that you're pretty well situated to be able to write your essays for this week. One thing that I will mention before ending this video is that, and I hope you're all watching these videos, the one thing that I hope you're able to do is take a look at the part on priming. Priming people, priming voters is just sort of activating voters. You're pushing people in a direction they were kind of going anyway. So that's kind of the dynamic I've been explaining in this video. But it also applies to what a lot of political scientists and communication scholars have studied, called racial priming or racialized priming. And this was actually part of my doctoral research. And so I went ahead and kind of popped it into a PowerPoint a couple of years ago when I presented it to someone else's class. And so I'm sharing that PowerPoint with you in Canvas. And I also, just for fun, I showed you my media appearances, which have nothing to do with politics and have everything to do with, no, that's not true. Nothing to do with partisan politics per se, but everything to do with the application of political science to more everyday problems. And just thought you'd get a kick out of hearing me in an interview I did in Wisconsin last year about my book and talking about the next generation of students of humanity. And then another media appearance I did on behalf of the Department of Political Science about 2 years ago in the last round of California propositions. So I hope you have fun with those, and you don't have to watch them if you don't care. But I think that at least the PowerPoint about priming might explain a little bit more about why priming is such an interesting political phenomenon. And so racial priming is, in kind of stoking racial fears, basically, is kind of along the same lines theoretically as just sort of switching people to say that they actually need to go and get in line behind their existing kind of partisan camp. So it's just playing on what people's predispositions are already. So anyway, so I think it's interesting stuff, and maybe you'll have some thoughts, and maybe we can discuss them in class about something that I've written or found. Anyway, I think we're about done for this particular lecture, and hope you have a good week once you watch this, and good luck with the essay, and let me know what we can talk about in class. Thanks for watching.